Divorced men? When your ex faced karma so brutally that even you felt sorry for her? Story 1. My ex Nadia divorced me like it was a product return. "You're too safe," she said, and moved straight into a luxury apartment with a finance guy who posted motivational quotes and rented cars like they were personalities. She also took the dog because she knew it would hurt. 6 months later, I got a call from an unknown number at 2:47 a.m. It was Nadia, voice shredded. "Please, can you come?" I almost hung up. Then I heard a man yelling in the background and something heavy hit a wall. When I arrived, the building's lobby was full of police and a manager holding a clipboard like a weapon. Nadia was barefoot, mascara streaked, hugging my old hoodie. She'd grabbed it from a box of trash she'd left at my mom's. The finance guy had been arrested. Turns out he wasn't a finance guy. He was being investigated for a lot of things, one cop said, like he was tired of listing them. Her apartment was sealed. Her accounts? Frozen. The car she'd been posting? Repossessed. Right there in the driveway while people filmed. Worst part? She'd signed as a co-signer on his business loans to build their future. Now debt collectors were calling her like it was a hobby. She whispered, "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." And I believed her. Because she wasn't smart enough to pull off something that calculated. She looked up at me with this tiny, scared face I hadn't seen since we were broken young. I ruined everything, didn't I? I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt nauseous. I didn't take her back. I just drove her to her sister's and asked for the dog. She handed me the leash without a fight, like karma had already taken everything she had left. Story 2. My ex-wife, Selena, made sure everyone knew the divorce was my fault. She told our friends I was controlling. She told her family I was lazy. She told our son I didn't want to be a dad anymore, even though she was the one who moved him 2 towns away and blocked my number. She won in the court of public opinion, and she enjoyed it. She posted selfies with captions like, "New chapter, new me," while I was eating ramen and paying child support on time like a boring villain. Then, one afternoon, my son called me from a number I didn't recognize. He was whispering, "Dad, can you come get me?" I drove like my tires were on fire. At the address, Selena's boyfriend answered the door. Older, sweaty, shirtless. "Who are you?" he said, like I was the problem. Selena appeared behind him, pale as paper. Her eyes were red, not from tears, from exhaustion. She tried to speak, but her throat looked like it forgot how. Turns out karma didn't come in the form of a scandal. It came as paperwork. She'd been pocketing the child support by claiming I wasn't paying, then applying for assistance and benefits using single-parent status. Her boyfriend pushed her into it, promising easy money. He also convinced her to put his name on her lease for stability. It got flagged, audited, investigated, and when it collapsed all at once. Benefits cut off. Repayment demanded. Charges threatened. The boyfriend vanished the second officials showed up, leaving her holding the bag, literally and legally. She sat on the couch, hands shaking, and said the first honest sentence I'd heard from her in years. "I messed up. I was angry and I let it get out of control." Our son looked at her like she was a stranger. I should have laughed. I should have said, "Told you so." Instead, I quietly packed my kid's clothes into a bag, took him home, and told Selena, "Get a lawyer. Stop lying. Start fixing it." As I left, she whispered, "Do you hate me?" And the worst part was, I didn't. I just felt tired and sad that my son's mom had burned her whole life down just to make me look like the villain. Story 3. My ex, Tasha, left me after 8 years because she wanted someone ambitious, which was hilarious because I was working 2 jobs while she sold Boss Babe skincare on social media and called it entrepreneurship. During the divorce, she demanded everything: the car, the furniture, half my retirement, and emotional damages, like love was a lawsuit. She also threatened to expose me if I didn't cooperate. I cooperated anyway because I wanted peace more than pride. A year later, I got a message. "Can you talk? It's important." It was from Tasha's mom. I called expecting drama. Instead, her mom sounded broken. "She's in the hospital," she said. Can you just come? She keeps asking for you." I didn't want to. I went anyway. Tasha looked smaller than I remembered, like the universe had turned her volume down. She had a brace on her wrist and bruises on her collarbone. She tried to smile and it fell apart halfway. Her ambitious new husband had convinced her to invest in his startup. She drained savings, took loans, signed papers she didn't understand. Then he used her credit to open lines she didn't know existed. When the business failed, he blamed her. When she threatened to leave, he got violent. The kicker? He filed for divorce first, claiming she was unstable and financially reckless. He attached screenshots of her begging him to stop spending. He made her look insane. He even tried to get a restraining order so she couldn't access the house, the one she'd paid for. She looked at me and whispered, "I thought you were holding me back. You were the only one who ever protected me." I stood there like an idiot, feeling my throat tighten. Because this wasn't justice. This was a wreck. I told her mom I'd drive her to appointments if needed. I helped her find a legal aid clinic. I didn't do it because I wanted her back, I didn't. I did it because watching someone get crushed by the exact kind of person they chased hits different. As I left, she called my name and said, "I'm sorry," and for the first time it sounded real enough to hurt. Story 4. My ex-wife, Bree, cheated, then divorced me like it was a power move. She upgraded immediately. New guy, new ring, new blended family posts with my old friends commenting hearts like it wasn't disgusting. She also trashed me to anyone who'd listen. Even my own aunt started sending me prayer messages about forgiveness, which is code for "we believe her" version. 2 years later, I was at a grocery store when I heard my name like it was being dragged across gravel. "Evan?" Bree stood near the checkout, staring at me like she'd seen a ghost. Her hair was unwashed. Her coat was too thin for the weather. She held a basket with cheap noodles and baby wipes. "Where's—" I started, automatically looking for her husband. Her mouth trembled. "Gone," she said. He emptied everything. I didn't know he was doing it. Apparently, Mr. Perfect had been running side businesses. In reality, he'd been gambling and using Bree's accounts because he said his ex was crazy and would hack him. Bree believed it because she wanted the fantasy. One day, the landlord posted eviction papers. Then the bank called. Then her car got taken. Then she found out her credit was destroyed. Under her name, her signature, her responsibility. The final slap? He reconnected with his first wife and went back to her, leaving Bree with his debt, his mess, and 2 little kids who weren't even hers full-time, because their mom swooped in and got emergency custody. Bree looked at me and said, "I can't even afford diapers. I'm sorry. She choked on the words. I should have felt like a king. Instead, I felt shame for ever loving someone who could become this. I didn't give her money. I bought the diapers and wipes in her basket, plus some groceries, and told her where the nearest community resource center was. She cried right there between the candy bars and tabloid magazines while strangers pretended not to see. As I walked away, she whispered, "You didn't deserve what I did," and I realized karma wasn't satisfying. It was just ugly, and loud, and final. Story 5. My ex, Laura, didn't just divorce me, she staged it. She waited until my dad passed, then accused me of hiding money, convinced her lawyer I was lying, and tried to drag my inheritance into the settlement. She acted like grief was a weakness she could monetize. The judge didn't buy it, but she still got a decent chunk because the system rewards paperwork, not truth. Laura walked out smiling like she'd won a game show. Fast forward 10 months. I'm at work when my phone rings. It's Laura's number. I almost ignored it. Then I heard her voicemail. Shaky, slurred, terrified. "Please. I'm in trouble. I don't know who else to call." I called back. No answer. I called her sister. Her sister screamed, "She's missing." Long story short, Laura had been dating a guy who presented himself as a wealth consultant. He targeted newly divorced women with settlements, women who wanted to feel smart and powerful after heartbreak. He promised to multiply her money, said he could recover what she deserved. She gave him everything, signed over access, let him handle her accounts. Then he vanished. But karma didn't stop there, because she'd also been laundering her own lie. She'd taken out loans using the settlement money as proof of assets, boasting she had guaranteed returns. Now the loans were due, the money was gone, and the bank didn't care about her feelings. When the police finally found her, she was in a motel 2 hours away, hiding because debt collectors were calling nonstop, and she was getting threats from people she'd borrowed from. She wasn't kidnapped. She was cornered. I drove to the station to confirm she was alive. She sat there under fluorescent lights, looking like someone had drained her spirit through a straw. The officer asked if I was family. Laura looked at me and whispered, "Please don't let me be alone." That line hit me harder than any insult she'd ever thrown, because I remembered her laughing in court while I was still numb from burying my dad. I didn't save her. I didn't fix it. I just told the officer, "She has a sister. Call her." Then I leaned down and said quietly, "This is what happens when you try to profit off pain." She started sobbing like a child, and I walked out feeling no victory, only the sick realization that karma can be deserved and still heartbreaking to witness. Story 6. My ex Oksana used to call me too soft like it was an insult. After the divorce, she upgraded fast. New man, new photos, new captions about finally choosing herself. She also made sure I lost half my friend group by telling everyone I was emotionally abusive, Because I asked where the money was going. A year later, I got a call from our old neighbor. Hey, I don't know if you care, but something's happening over here. I drove by out of pure curiosity. There were moving trucks outside Oksana's building. Not the cute kind. The we're taking your life kind. Bailiffs. A locksmith. People with clipboards. Oksana came out carrying trash bags. Not luggage, trash bags. She saw me and froze like she'd been slapped. Her new man wasn't there. Neither were her friends. Just her and a pile of her stuff like she'd been evicted from herself. Turns out her boyfriend had pushed her into a guaranteed investment with his cousin. She put her savings, took a loan, even used her car as collateral because she wanted to prove she wasn't soft. The cousin vanished. The boyfriend vanished 2 weeks later, along with her jewelry and laptop. She tried to sue, but the paperwork had her signature, her consent, her, I understand the risk. She sobbed and said, I didn't understand anything. I stood there feeling something I hated, pity. Because this wasn't a girl boss lesson. This was a woman losing basic safety. She asked if she could store some boxes in my garage, just for a week. I said no. But I did call her sister and waited until she arrived, because leaving her there alone felt cruel. As I drove away, I heard her sister yelling, So you left him for this? And Oksana's answer was so small I barely heard it. I know. Story 7. My ex-wife Marina divorced me and then went on a campaign to rewrite history. In her version, I was the villain who never supported her dreams. Her dreams, by the way, were quitting jobs every 3 months and calling it finding herself. She finally found herself with a flashy wedding photographer who promised to make her famous. He also promised to adopt my stepdaughter, Dasha, because Marina loved big gestures. I found out the karma part on a random Tuesday when Dasha showed up at my door with a backpack and a bruised lip. She wouldn't look at me, just said, Mom told me to come here. I asked where Marina was. Dasha swallowed. At the hospital, Marina's new husband had been arrested for assault, not on her, on a client. He'd snapped during a shoot, punched a guy, then tried to run. Police searched his studio and found hard drives full of things that made everyone's face turn gray. The kind of content that makes you want to throw up and also makes you understand why handcuffs exist. Marina wasn't charged, but her life detonated anyway. Sponsors dropped her. Her friends deleted photos. Her name got dragged through comments like broken glass. And the adoption paperwork? It put her right in the blast zone. Now Child Services was involved, asking questions she couldn't cry her way out of. She called me from the hospital, voice cracking. They're taking Dasha. They think I'm part of it. I wanted to scream, You invited a stranger into your kid's life for clout. But all I heard was panic, real panic. I hired a lawyer, not for Marina, for Dasha. I took temporary custody while the system investigated. Weeks later, Marina showed up at my place with hollow eyes and no makeup, like she'd aged 10 years. I know you hate me, she whispered, but please don't let her end up in foster care. I didn't forgive her. I didn't comfort her. I just closed the door gently because for the first time, her karma wasn't about me. It was about a child who deserved better adults. Story 8. My ex, Alina, cheated, then tried to make me the bad guy by claiming I was emotionally absent. Meanwhile, she was the one disappearing for girls' nights that lasted until sunrise. After the divorce, she got engaged to her affair partner within 4 months. She posted a ring photo with the caption, When you meet a real man. My mom cried when she saw it. That's how petty it felt. Karma hit her in the least cinematic way possible. A baby shower. I only know because my cousin invited me to our mutual friend's place and said, Please come. You need to see this. Alina walked in glowing, acting like she owned the room. She was pregnant. Everyone clapped. Then the host, Alina's best friend, turned on the TV and played a slideshow. At first it was normal. Couple photos, ultrasound pics, cute captions. Then the photos changed. Screenshots, messages, voice notes. Alina's fiancé had been sleeping with the host for months. And the host had collected proof because she wanted it to be public. She wanted Alina to feel what you did to me when you stole him. The room went silent in the way rooms go silent right before someone breaks. Alina's smile collapsed. She kept saying, That's fake, like repeating it could glue reality back together. Her fiancé tried to grab the remote, but other people blocked him. Someone yelled, You're disgusting. Alina ran to the bathroom and threw up. Like, actually threw up. I heard it. I should have felt satisfied. Instead, I felt sick. Because she was pregnant. Because she looked terrified. Because humiliation isn't justice. It's a weapon, and everyone was swinging it. Later, she came out crying, mascara flooding her face. She saw me and whispered, You knew? I didn't, I said. And that was true. She slid down the wall and sobbed like she was 12 again. And for a second, I wasn't her ex. I was just a guy watching someone's entire fake life collapse in public. Story 9. My ex-wife, Katya, left me for my boss. Yes, really. It was like a bad movie, except I didn't get a soundtrack, just HR emails and insomnia. She moved into his fancy house, posted photos by his pool, and blocked me everywhere. When the divorce finalized, she texted one last line: "You were always temporary." 2 years later, I got a letter in the mail addressed to Mr. Katya's husband. Not my name. Just that. Inside was a court notice. My boss's ex-wife was suing, and Katya was named too. Turns out my boss had been hiding assets for years, using shell companies, moving money through consultants, the whole rich guy playbook. Katya thought she'd won the lottery. She didn't realize she'd married the crime scene. When the lawsuit hit, everything froze. Accounts, properties. His friends disappeared. And the real dagger. My boss blamed Katya publicly. He claimed she handled the finances, that she was the reason documents were missing. Katya called me for the first time in ages. Her voice sounded like sandpaper. "They're saying I'm the one who did it." I almost laughed. Instead, my stomach dropped. Because I knew that type of man. When the ship sinks, he hands someone else the anchor. She told me she might go to jail. She was shaking so hard she couldn't hold the phone steady. I didn't understand what I was signing, she kept repeating. I said, "You left me for him." "I know," she whispered. "I know. I deserve that. But not this." And that's when the pity hit. Not forgiveness. Not love. Just the grim understanding that she'd traded a stable life for a predator in a suit, and now he was feeding her to save himself. I didn't rescue her. I gave her one thing. The name of a lawyer who hates my former boss more than I do. Story 10. My ex, Sophia, was obsessed with appearances. During the divorce, she spent more time on Instagram stories than on actual paperwork. She wanted everyone to think she escaped a toxic marriage. She left out the part where she emptied our joint account the week before filing. She moved into a new apartment and started hosting loud parties. I heard about it through mutuals. Sophia's living her best life. Sophia's thriving. Sophia's finally free. Then one night, I got a frantic message from her. I messed up. Please answer. Against my better judgment, I did. She had been driving home from a party when she got pulled over. She wasn't drunk, she swore, but her passenger was. Her new boyfriend. And in his bag? Stuff that made the police call backup. Sophia was trying to explain through sobs that she didn't know, but the problem wasn't what she knew. The problem was what she'd posted. She'd filmed him flashing cash, making jokes, showing off packages, as if it was edgy humor. She'd tagged locations. She'd bragged about moving smart. It was all there, public, time-stamped, saved by strangers. Now investigators were treating her like a participant, not a bystander. Her job put her on leave. Her landlord started eviction proceedings. Her friends went silent overnight. She met me outside the station, shaking in a thin jacket. "I ruined my life," she whispered. "I was just trying to feel important." I looked at her and saw the same woman who used to cry when a photo didn't get enough likes. Only now the stakes were real. I said, "Get a lawyer. Stop posting. Tell the truth." She started crying harder and said, "Do you think I'm a bad person?" And I hated that my answer wasn't easy, because karma had hit her like a truck. And in that moment, she didn't look evil. She looked human, terrified, and finally offline. Story 11. My ex, Vera, tried to win the divorce by turning me into a criminal. 1 week after we signed, she filed a report claiming I'd been stalking her. Then she told mutual friends I was dangerous, like she was doing them a public service. I panicked, because once that label sticks, it never fully washes off. The thing she didn't know? The night she claimed I was outside her building, I was at my cousin's birthday. And my cousin streams everything. There was a live video of me blowing out candles, time-stamped, with like 30 people in the background roasting me for my terrible singing. My lawyer sent it in. The police pulled the building cameras too. No me, no car, nothing. Then they asked Vera for her evidence. She handed over screenshots. That looked weirdly cropped. And when they checked the metadata, it was even worse. Some were edited. Some were from months earlier. One was literally a screenshot of a random guy's profile photo that she'd labeled him. Karma hit fast and brutally. False report, potential charges, and, because she worked in a field that requires trust, her employer put her on leave pending investigation. I saw her in the hallway outside a small interview room at the station, arms wrapped around herself like she was cold inside her bones. She looked up at me with swollen eyes and whispered, "I didn't think they'd take it this far." I wanted to spit fire. Instead, I just felt sick. because she'd been so convinced the world would clap for her lies that she hadn't prepared for the world to demand proof. As the officer called her name, she started shaking and said, barely audible, "Can you just tell them I'm not a monster?" And the awful part is, I couldn't. But I still felt sorry watching her walk in alone. Story 12. My ex-wife, Lana, took the dog in the divorce, not because she loved him more, because she knew I did. She also insisted on taking my grandpa's old ring to sell for her restart, then posted a photo of it on her finger like it was a trophy. Months later, I got a call from an unfamiliar vet clinic. "Are you listed as an emergency contact for a dog named Bruno?" My stomach dropped. "Yes." "Is he okay?" The vet sounded careful. Bruno had swallowed something, tiny, sharp, and needed surgery. Lana had brought him in late because she thought he'd be fine. The bill was massive. She didn't have the money. Her credit card declined twice. And when the receptionist asked for payment, Lana started screaming that the clinic was scamming her. Then karma turned brutal. The X-ray also showed something else. Older damage. Malnutrition. Neglect. Not evil movie neglect. The real kind. Missed checkups, cheap food, no meds, and a dog quietly suffering while she posted selfies. The clinic reported it. Now animal control was involved. Lana's new boyfriend, who loved the dog on Instagram, suddenly didn't want problems and ghosted her. When I got there, Lana was in the waiting room, face blotchy, hands shaking. She hissed, "This is your fault. He misses you. He got sick because..." The vet cut her off. Calm, deadly calm. "Ma'am, this didn't happen because the dog misses someone." Lana's anger broke and turned into panic. "They're going to take him," she whispered, like she'd just realized consequences were real. "I paid for Bruno's surgery. Not for her. For him." She watched me sign the papers and started crying like her throat didn't know how to handle shame. As they carried Bruno through the swinging doors, Lana reached for my sleeve and said, "Please don't hate me." I didn't answer. I just pulled my arm back gently. Because pity is not forgiveness. And Bruno was the only innocent one in that room. Story 13. My ex, Irina, left me and immediately rebranded herself as a self-made entrepreneur. The truth, she took my client list from my laptop while I was asleep and launched a copycat service with my own templates. I found out when a longtime client asked why I was raising prices under a new company name. When I confronted her, she smiled and said, "That's business." Karma didn't come as a lawsuit. It came as a live presentation. She landed a big contract with a local chain. Huge deal, lots of money, lots of visibility. They invited influencers, press, the whole circus. She went on stage in a perfect blazer, mic clipped, projector behind her, and the system glitched. Instead of her polished slideshow, her desktop flashed on the big screen. Everyone saw it. Folders labeled with my company name, my exact templates, draft emails with my signature still on them, even a file titled "Copy from his drive." She lunged for the laptop like it was on fire. Too late. People had phones out. Someone in the front row actually laughed, like a sharp, cruel bark. The client's CEO stood up and said into the mic, "Are we paying for stolen work?" Irina's face drained. Her voice cracked as she tried to talk her way out, but it sounded like lies tripping over each other. That night she called me, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. "They canceled everything. Everyone's posting. I'm ruined." I should have celebrated, but hearing her fall apart didn't feel like justice. It felt like watching someone step in front of a train because they thought the rules didn't apply to them. She whispered, "Please, tell them you gave me permission." I went quiet. And through the phone, all I could hear was her realizing there was no undo button. Story 14. After the divorce, my ex-wife Svetlana took the apartment and bragged that she'd won the city life. She renovated it, threw parties, acted like she'd leveled up. Meanwhile, I moved into a small rental and rebuilt my sanity one quiet evening at a time. Then I got a message from the building group chat. Emergency meeting. Flooding. Structural damage. I showed up mostly out of habit. The hallway smelled like wet concrete. People were yelling. The ceiling in the stairwell had a long crack like a scar. Svetlana stood in the middle of it all, hair in a messy bun, eyes wide with that specific terror of someone who can't buy their way out. The upstairs neighbor's pipe had burst weeks earlier. Slow leak, hidden behind a wall. It soaked beams, ruined wiring, spread mold. The building insurer refused to cover most of it because the leak had been ongoing, and inspections showed evidence it had been ignored. Ignored by who? The owner, who'd been too busy posting renovation reels to pay attention to the weird smell and the peeling paint. Now the repair assessment was enormous. Everyone had to contribute, and Svetlana couldn't. Not after maxing out cards on furniture she'd already shown off online. She tried to play queen. until the building manager slapped a notice on the board. Unpaid fees, penalties, legal action, possible lien. Her face crumpled right there in front of all those neighbors she'd been trying to impress. When everyone scattered, she approached me quietly, like she was stepping onto thin ice. "I can't stay here," she whispered. They'll take it." I looked at the apartment door. The one she'd fought me for like it was the meaning of life. Now it was just a problem with walls. I didn't offer her my couch, but I did hand her my old winter gloves from the car because her hands were shaking and it was freezing outside. She held them like they were precious and said, almost choking on it, "I thought winning would feel different." And I felt sorry, because karma had turned her trophy into a trap. Story 15. My ex, Daria, spent years telling people I was a deadbeat, even though I paid everything I was supposed to and showed up for our daughter whenever Daria allowed it. She loved the narrative more than the truth. It got her sympathy. It got her likes. It got her a new husband who thought he was saving her. Then our daughter got engaged. Invitations went out and I noticed something. My name was on the main invite. Daria's name was on a separate card for family seating, like an afterthought. I didn't understand until the rehearsal dinner. Our daughter stood up with a glass and said clearly, "Before tomorrow, I need to thank the parent who never used me as a weapon." The room went dead silent. Knife and fork silence. Daria's smile froze. Her new husband shifted like he'd been punched in the ribs. People looked around because everyone knew exactly who that sentence was aimed at. Daria stood up so fast her chair scraped. She walked out, heels clicking like gunshots. I followed outside because, no matter what, she's still my daughter's mom. Daria was in the parking lot, crying so hard she couldn't keep her mascara from running down her chin. She whispered, "She hates me." I almost said, "You taught her to." But the words wouldn't come, because she looked genuinely shattered, like someone watching their own lies finally collect interest. She grabbed my sleeve and pleaded, "Please talk to her. Tell her I tried." And that's when it hit me. Karma didn't just embarrass her. It took the one thing she thought she owned, our daughter's loyalty, and handed it back to the truth. I didn't promise anything. I just said, "Let her have her day." Daria sank onto the curb, shaking, and I walked back inside hearing the music start up, while she sat alone outside with the version of herself she'd created. Story 16. My ex, Yulia, didn't just leave. She curated the breakup like a brand launch. She made a whole post about surviving narcissistic abuse without ever using my name. But she tagged places only we went to, so everyone knew who the villain was supposed to be. Old coworkers unfollowed me. My cousin stopped inviting me to things. She'd built a courtroom out of Instagram stories. 2 months later, her page blew up. Thousands of followers. Sponsors in her DMs. She started doing healing coaching, selling courses with titles like Reclaim Your Power. Then Karma showed up wearing a boring suit, a defamation notice, and a fraud complaint. One of her clients recognized details in a video and sent it to my lawyer. My lawyer didn't even have to fight hard. Yulia had saved everything. Screenshots, voice notes, receipts. Except the receipts weren't receipts. They were chopped up, out of order, and in one case, literally a sentence I'd said about my job edited to sound like a threat. When the complaint hit, sponsors froze payments. The platform flagged her account. People demanded proof, and her own community turned into sharks, calling her a liar, doxing her, posting her wedding photos with captions like, "Look at the actress." She called me crying, voice hoarse. They're sending messages to my mom. They're calling me a scammer. I can't go outside. I didn't feel happy. I felt this heavy pit in my stomach because internet mobs don't stop at justice. They go for blood. She whispered, "Please, say something. Tell them I'm not a monster." And for the first time, I understood what real karma looks like. Not a neat lesson, but a collapse that keeps falling long after the person admits they were wrong. Story 17. My ex-wife, Nadia, wanted the divorce to hurt. So she took my toolbox, my fishing gear, and the one photo album I had of my dad. Petty, surgical. Then she sold a bunch of it online and posted captions about decluttering toxic energy. A year later, I got a call from her mother, who never liked me until she needed me. "Can you come over?" Something happened. When I arrived, there were firefighters in front of Nadia's house. The windows were black. The lawn was soaked. Nadia sat on the curb wrapped in a blanket, staring like she'd been unplugged. Kitchen fire. Started from a cheap phone charger she'd bought from some sketchy online shop. It sparked while she was asleep, and by the time she woke up, smoke had filled the hallway. She made it out, but her dog didn't. That dog wasn't just a pet. It was her whole identity. She used to post him daily like he was her child. She kept repeating, "I should have checked. I should have checked," like she was trying to rewind time with guilt. The insurance investigator told her quietly that coverage might be denied because she'd ignored previous electrical warnings during an inspection. She'd been too busy and didn't want to pay for repairs. So now she had grief, ash, and a possible denial letter coming. She looked up at me and said, barely a whisper, "Do you think I deserve this?" I wanted to say yes. She'd been cruel. She'd tried to erase me. But watching her shake and gasp for air like she couldn't breathe around the loss, I couldn't. I just said, no one deserves that. And that's the sick part about karma. Sometimes it hits where it should, and even the person who was wrong becomes a human again in your eyes. Story 18. My ex, Karina, ran off with a coworker and left me with the mortgage. Then she demanded alimony because she'd sacrificed her career. Her sacrifice was quitting a job she hated and spending 2 years finding herself in cafes. She got a new apartment, a new man, and a new circle who cheered her on like she'd won liberation. Then one day I got a call from a number I didn't know. It was Karina, whispering like she was hiding. "Can you pick me up? Please. I'll pay you back." I almost said no. Then I heard a baby crying in the background. I froze. "Karina, whose baby is that?" Silence. Then, mine. She hadn't told anyone, not her family, not our mutual friends, because her new man had promised he'd handle everything. He told her not to put his name on the birth certificate until the timing is right. He convinced her to move cities so she'd start fresh. Timing never got right. He disappeared. His number dead. His social media wiped. And because his name wasn't on anything, Karina couldn't even file for support properly. She was trapped in a tiny rented room, running out of money with a newborn and no safety net, because she'd burned every bridge like she'd never need help again. When I picked her up, she looked wrecked. Not just tired, wrecked. Her hands shook while she held the baby. "I was so sure," she said. "I was so sure you were the problem." I should have gloated. Instead, I felt this cold wave of pity because the baby didn't choose any of it. I drove her to a women's support center and waited in the parking lot until she went inside, because she looked like she might run away out of shame. As I left, she texted one line, "I used to think you were weak. You're the only one who showed up." Story 19. My ex-wife, Ina, was obsessed with status. After the divorce, she dated a local politician. Flashy, well-known, always smiling for cameras. She posted photos at charity events like she'd become royalty. She also messaged me once, out of nowhere, "Hope you're enjoying your little life." I didn't reply. Karma hit her on live television. There was a scandal. Corruption allegations, misused funds, the whole ugly package. Reporters swarmed. And Ina, being the accessory she was, showed up beside him at a press conference in a designer coat, trying to look supportive. Then a journalist asked, "Did you know your partner was paying personal expenses through the charity account?" Another asked, "Are you the person labeled I in these messages?" The politician smiled at first, then threw her under the bus so hard I felt it through the screen. He said, "My partner handles my personal scheduling and purchases. If there was misuse, it was without my knowledge." Her face visibly broke. She blinked like she didn't understand the language anymore. The next day, her name was everywhere online. People dug through her posts, highlighted expensive dinners, vacations, handbags, and called her the charity thief's girlfriend. Sponsors dropped her. Friends stopped answering. Her job put her on suspension because public trust. She called me late at night, whisper crying, "He's blaming me. He's telling people I did it." I said, "You knew what kind of man he was." "I didn't think he'd sacrifice me," she choked out. That's when I felt sorry. Not because she was innocent, because she wasn't, but because watching someone realize they were never loved, only used, is a special kind of humiliation. Story 20. My ex, Lilia, spent the divorce trying to make me pay for her choices. She ran up credit cards in my name, then cried in court about financial abuse. She was charming enough that even the mediator looked at me like I'd kicked a puppy. For months, I lived with that quiet fear. What if the system believes her more than reality? Then karma came from the last place I expected. Her own new husband. She remarried fast to a guy who seemed calm and responsible. Everyone said, "See? She's stable now." I almost believed it, until he filed a report against her. He discovered she'd forged his signature on a loan application for their future. When he confronted her, she laughed and said it was just paperwork. He didn't laugh. He hired a forensic accountant. They found patterns, fake signatures, altered documents, repeated small lies that added up to a crime-shaped mountain. When investigators started calling, Lilia panicked and did what she always did. She tried to make it my fault. She emailed my boss. She messaged my mom. She posted vague threats about telling the truth soon. But this time, the world didn't care about her tears. There were documents, experts, numbers, real evidence. I ran into her at the courthouse by accident. She was sitting on a bench, hands trembling, face gray. She looked at me and whispered, "I didn't think it would go this far." I almost said, "You never do." Instead, I just felt pity because she looked like someone who'd finally realized her pretty words couldn't talk her out of handcuffs. And when they called her case number, she stood up slowly, like gravity had doubled, then walked into the courtroom alone. Story 21. My ex, Tatiana, was the kind of person who could cry on command. During the divorce, she cried in court, cried to our friends, cried to my mother, until everyone believed she was escaping some terrible man. The truth? She was escaping boredom. She wanted drama, attention, a big life. So she left me for a nightclub promoter who smelled like cologne and bad decisions. She posted VIP wristbands like they were diplomas. Karma came as a phone call from the hospital. Her sister called me because Tatiana had blocked everyone else in a fight, and somehow, I was still the reliable number in the family. Tatiana had been in a car accident. Not a dramatic crash. Worse, a stupid one. The promoter had been speeding, showing off, filming a story with one hand on the wheel. They clipped a barrier. He walked away with scratches. Tatiana didn't. When I walked into the ER, she looked like a stranger. One eye swollen, arm in a cast, voice small. She tried to joke, then started crying because it hurt to laugh. The promoter never showed. Later I learned he told people she was too much responsibility now, like she was a broken phone. She whispered, "He won't answer." I should have felt satisfied. She chose him. She mocked me for being safe, and now safety was the only thing she wanted. I sat there while the doctor explained rehab. Months of it. Bills. Pain. The kind of consequences you can't post away. Before I left, she grabbed my wrist with her good hand and said, "Please don't let me do this alone." I didn't take her back. I didn't even promise friendship. I just called her sister again and said, "Come now," because watching karma hit her body instead of her ego made me feel sorry in a way I didn't expect. Story 22. My ex-wife, Olya, loved to teach lessons. After the divorce, she tried to punish me by keeping my son from me, then telling everyone I stopped showing up. When I fought it legally, she called me petty. When I backed off for peace, she called me weak. Then she met a man with a spotless smile and a sad story. He was a single dad who got betrayed. She fell for it hard, because she loves playing rescuer. They moved in together fast, and she started pushing for him to have access to my son too. "It's family," she said. "Don't be dramatic." Karma hit when my son came home quiet and wouldn't eat. I asked what happened. He just shrugged and said, "Mom's boyfriend gets angry." I documented. I reported. I pushed for an emergency hearing. At the hearing, Olya walked in confident. Then the judge asked her boyfriend to answer a few routine questions. Background, employment, address history. His face changed. Not much, but enough. Because the court officer already had his record. Multiple aliases. Prior protective orders. A charge from another region that he'd forgotten to mention. When the judge read the details out loud, Olya's mouth opened like she couldn't process sound. She turned to him, whispering, "Tell them it's not you." He didn't even look at her. He just stared straight ahead like she was already gone. The judge granted my emergency custody on the spot. Outside the courtroom, Olya collapsed on a bench, shaking. "I didn't know," she kept repeating. "I swear I didn't know." And for once, I believed her. She wasn't evil. She was reckless with other people's safety because she wanted to feel loved. She looked up at me with raw terror and said, "They're going to think I'm a bad mother." I wanted to say, "You were." But watching her realize her choices had put our son at risk, it wasn't satisfying. It was horrifying. I walked away with custody papers in my hand and pity in my chest like a stone. Story 23. My ex, Lyra, took the house in the divorce and treated it like a trophy. She threw a fresh start party and invited mutual friends like the house hadn't been built by my overtime and my dad's help. I moved into a rental and tried to start over quietly. A year later, I got a letter from the bank addressed to both of us. That was strange because the mortgage was supposed to be her responsibility now. I called. The bank rep sounded exhausted. "We've been trying to reach Ms. Lyra for months. She hadn't paid. Not once. She'd been refinancing soon," she claimed. She'd been waiting for a better rate. Meanwhile, she was buying furniture, vacations, new clothes, living like the mortgage was a myth. The house went into foreclosure. I drove there because part of me couldn't believe it. The front yard was overgrown. Mail piled up. The windows had those little sticky notes from inspections. And Lara was inside, surrounded by boxes, screaming into her phone at someone who wasn't listening. When she saw me, she didn't get angry. She got pale. "They're taking it," she whispered, like saying it softly might change it. Her new boyfriend had promised to help, But apparently help meant disappearing the second the bank got serious. And because she'd ignored every notice, she'd lost any chance to negotiate. The final twist? The foreclosure didn't just ruin her, because my name had been tied to that property once. It threatened my credit too, despite the divorce agreement. I could have sued her. I could have destroyed her. Instead, I stood in the doorway and watched her panic spiral into something close to a breakdown. She sank to the floor and said, almost childlike, I thought I deserved it. I hated that my first feeling wasn't anger. It was pity. Because losing a house isn't just losing walls. It's losing the story you told yourself about winning. Story 24. My ex-wife Sashka left me for a wellness guru she met at a retreat. He had a man bun, a calm voice, and the kind of eyes that made people believe nonsense. She said I was too negative because I asked how he actually made money. After the divorce, she sold half her belongings and joined his community. She posted sunrises, smoothies, quotes about abundance. Then one evening, I got a message from a mutual friend. Is your ex okay? She's at the station. I went because I'm an idiot with a conscience. Sashka was sitting on a plastic chair in a police lobby, mascara streaks on her cheeks. Her hands were shaking like she hadn't slept in days. The guru had been arrested for running a scam, a big one. Fake courses, fake credentials, investments that were just money going into his personal accounts. He'd convinced followers to sign contracts that were basically financial traps. Sashka wasn't charged, but she was being interviewed because her name was on some documents. She'd helped manage payments, thinking she was supporting the mission. Now she was realizing she might be legally exposed just for being loyal. Her voice cracked when she said, I lost everything. My savings, my friends, my dignity. She looked at me like I was the last stable object in a room collapsing. You tried to warn me, didn't you? I nodded. She started crying harder and whispered, I made you the villain because it was easier than admitting I was gullible. That should have felt good. Instead, it felt sad. Because the person who hurt me wasn't a mastermind. She was someone who wanted magic so badly she bought the lie. Story 25. My ex, Anya, weaponized rumors. After the divorce, she told people I was an addict. I'm not. Never was. But once that word gets out, it sticks like smoke. I lost a job opportunity because of it. Someone heard things. I couldn't prove a negative. I just took the hit and kept moving. Karma came in the form of a real addiction, just not mine. Anya's new husband, the one she bragged about as a provider, got hooked on pills after a work injury. At first she hid it, because she's obsessed with appearances. Then she started borrowing money. Then she started selling things. I found out when my phone lit up with a message from her. Please, I need help. I ignored it. Then another message. He took my jewelry. He's gone. I'm scared. I shouldn't have gone. I went. Her apartment looked like a storm had walked through. Drawers pulled out. Couch cushions ripped. Panic in every corner. Anya was shaking, eyes wide and hollow. I didn't know it was this bad, she kept saying. I thought love could fix it. Then she said the sentence that made my stomach twist. Now everyone thinks it's me. Because her husband had been telling people she was the addict. Sound familiar? The exact lie she'd thrown at me, now thrown at her. And people believed it, because it was easier than believing the provider was falling apart. She slid down the wall and sobbed. Is this what it felt like for you? I didn't want to say yes. But it was. I didn't take her back. I didn't even comfort her. I just gave her the number of a support group and told her to protect herself legally. As I left, she whispered, I'm sorry for what I did to you. And I hated that I believed her. Because karma had finally taught her the lesson with teeth.